because Republicans are changing their strategy does not mean that Democrats will suddenly embrace a law that has alternatively been compared to 9/11, to slavery, and to the Holocaust. Right? Wrong.
Mark's insurance company didn't want to pay for the treatment that ultimately saved his life.
No one should be fighting an insurance company while you're fighting for your life. That's why I helped pass a law that prevents insurance companies from canceling your policy if you get sick or deny coverage for pre-existing conditions. I'm Mark Pryor, and I approve this message.
Joining me now is Washington Bureau Chief for BuzzFeed, John Stanton, and correspondent for The Upshot at The New York Times, Josh Barrow. Dudes, I think this is a big deal, and here's why. We have heard about the repeal of Obamacare, how onerous and evil and awful it is, and how much it was going to be a yoke around Democrats' neck. And now the people who are not talking about it are increasingly Republicans, and the people who are Democrats. John, am I in a stupor? Am I in denial? What is going on here?
No, I think you're right. I think, you know, the prior ad really is the thing to me that is the most amazing. You know, This was a issue that I think everybody looked at him and said this is going to kill him. And instead, not only is he sort of not just accepting it as a reality, but he's actually going out and embracing it full force, which is remarkable. You know, I think if you'd asked anybody 3 months ago if he was going to do that, they would have said there's no way. And, you know, I think Republicans, frankly, have gotten to the point where everybody they're going to get that is going to hate Obamacare and vote against a Democrat over it, they already have. They don't, it's not, there's no, the diminishing returns.
There's a ceiling on that.
Yeah, and Democrats are seeing that there is a space for them to go after it. It's just, you know, they do these kind of ads, and I think it can work for them.
Well, and initially, Republicans were winning what Greg Sargent calls the anecdote war. Oh, I was kicked off my insurance. Oh, and the Democrats didn't have anecdotes to fight back with because people hadn't been enrolled. Now they do. Now people know exactly the sort of practical implications of the Affordable Care Act.
Right. I mean, I think, you know, for years we've seen this split where various individual parts of Obamacare poll better than Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act does as a whole, most of the components of the law. But so long as it was an abstract concept, a law that was to come, it was harder to run on that. Now, Democrats are in a position not only where they can run on things like prohibiting insurance companies from discriminating based on pre-existing conditions, they can attack Republicans for wanting to repeal a law that includes those provisions. So I think it really has turned the tables to an extent on it. It'll be interesting to see whether Mark Pryor's attempt essentially to decompose the law and talk about it as its components and say, look, these components of the law are good and I support them. I assume that Republicans will come back and say, that's Obamacare, you're running on Obamacare. It'll be interesting to see how voters react to that.
Is that a negative? I mean, then it is attaching something good to Obamacare. Well, I think Republicans have said they don't want to repeal.
I think that's the question. I think Arkansas is an interesting state for this, because remember, Arkansas is a state with a heavily Republican legislature that has expanded Medicaid. Now, they've done it through a compromise where they're expanding Medicaid in the form of private insurance. Arkansas sort of worked in the way that we might have liked the U.S. Congress to work, where the two parties got together and came up with a bipartisan compromise.
Let's not be hasty here. That is a good point, though. John, the sharpest drops in uninsurance level, the level of the number of uninsured under Obamacare have happened in two states, Arkansas and Kentucky. In Arkansas, the rate has dropped 10.1%. So the question is, do the positives of Obamacare, which is to say insurance coverage, trump the abject hatred of President Obama in a red state like Arkansas?
Well, you know, I think it'll be interesting to see if Allison Grimes decides to pick up this similar kind of thing, sort of using, because the state program is very, very popular. I mean, it essentially did the Obamacare law, but it is being, you know, through the state, and people find it very good. They're very positive about it. The governor's doing very well with that. And if she picks that up and says, you know, these are the kind of things that we can do if we keep a Democratic Senate, you know, in Washington, that could, it would be interesting to see if that could help her. I mean, so far she hasn't really, jumped full force onto it, but if Pryor doesn't get hurt, you could see her potentially trying to use
that. And she is, I mean, she has, this week has been talking more about parts of the Affordable Care Act without calling it Obamacare. The other thing that Democrats in red states have done successfully is put Republicans on defense in states where governors have not expanded Medicaid. I mean, that is a very real world problem that poor, you know, residents tangibly, emotionally, viscerally understand. The guys next door have coverage, and we don't because our governor is deciding not to.
Right, and I think that'll be interesting to see in that Arkansas and Kentucky are both these red states with relatively low incomes that stand to gain a lot from Obamacare and that have done fairly aggressive expansions under Obamacare, which is why you see so many people getting insurance. There's a lot for Democrats to run on there. The question is, in states that haven't expanded Medicaid, where uptake of Obamacare is low, will Democrats be able to expand explain, look, it's Republicans who were standing in your way, who didn't take the Medicaid expansion, or will there just sort of be this sense
obfuscation.
that things didn't change that much? This law came in and I didn't get new insurance and my neighbors didn't get new insurance. I don't think we know yet what the will be in states like Texas or
But it has
Louisiana.
made it awkward for Republicans who don't quite know how to answer that question. To this sort of Republican playbook, John, we have news this week that Mitch McConnell is planning a Ted Cruz-like strategy if Republicans do take the Senate, which is basically attach really painful things relating to the president's signature achievements to any funding bills. This shutdown, or shut down the government, this shut down the government strategy did not work well for the Republican Party, so why announce it ahead of time? If why sort of shoot yourself in the foot? Like, oh, if you elect us to if you give us control of the upper chamber, we're going to make life really miserable. I mean, I just don't understand the strategy.
Well, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to get their base out, and I think particularly in a place like Arkansas, again, where Republicans aren't doing nearly as well in the Senate race as they thought they were. Same as Louisiana and North Carolina, they're having difficulties. They need to get their base to come out, and they need McConnell as sort of the would-be leader of the Senate to say, all these things that you want, we're going to come out and do for you if you give me the players to do it. And whether or not he actually would do all those things, I think remains to be seen. But he has to get these people excited. It's
just weird to me that you get people to the polls based on a strategy of like punishment and pain and potential miserable gridlock. That is, he's not even promising to get the things done. He's just promising to take it to the president's doorstep and make it really awful in Washington.
Well, I mean, this is what Republicans have wanted to hear for the last 6 years. We're going to take the fight to the president. Remember, Mitch McConnell is the guy who came up with the strategy all the way back in 2009 that they were not going to let the president have Republican votes on any of his signature efforts, deny him the ability to say anything was bipartisan. It's kind of just an extension of that.
So Ted Cruz didn't come up with it. This is what we learned today. John Stanton and Josh Farrow, thank you guys both for your time.
Thank you.
Coming